you just see it that there's someone coming right out of school now, it's almost like the second they finish onboarding and training, they are asking for a promotion.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. This is your host, Carl J. Cox. Excited to have with us our guest, Will Spengler. He's a founder of Frederick Fox. It's a recruiting firm that helps companies hire top tier finance, accounting, and executive talent. Here at 40 Accounting, this is meaningful to us. We are continuously trying to find ways that our firms and the companies we work with can help find talent. So actually, I'm excited with the new relationship that we have here with Will and his company that he has. He has more than 15 years experience in executive search, and he has definitely a focus on accounting help, but also sales talent and other executives. And so he has more than one thing. He has about over 40 recruiters on his team. I think actually over 50 recruiters, I think you mentioned on your team. And he has a growing business and he's trying to double his business, which I love that way. So I always
Yeah.
love working with companies doubling. So Will, welcome to the Mesh podcast.
Thanks, Carl. I appreciate you having me on. You're correct. We got about 56 recruiters now, and we have 5 people in the back office that, senior controller, senior accountant, and then we have some APAR timesheets level folks that support our back office shared service center. But, we're a small company. It's all relative, roughly around 10 million in revenues. And you're absolutely correct. The North Star is to get to 20 million. So, predominantly what we do with multiple states, national search, is executive level accounting and finance. We've worked with a lot of public accounting firms, currently working with a lot of public accounting firms as well. But we do a lot in industry, a lot of controller, finance, tax, audit type positions. So that's really our expertise.
As I was talking to Will ahead of time, we're literally in the process of hiring a tax manager right now. So it's like I wish we would have known each other a little bit earlier, and we help other people to try to find these situations. So it's really good to know because in particular, finance and accounting is a very scarce resource right now, right? Before we get going and talking about some of the trends, you have a really funny story about a case where I believe was a accounting partner in a firm that was they were looking at hiring. Share us with that story because it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, sure. So we worked with a CPA firm out in Phoenix, Arizona, and we were running a tax partner search for at least 5 months. And we had a gentleman going for a final round, probably a 6 round interview for this CPA firm in Arizona. And all he had to do that day was meet the partners for a final, just meet you. We're going to bring you in and have you start. And, unfortunately, as he was in the waiting room, he had to use the restroom, and he opened the maintenance closet, and the receptionist watched this and watched the gentleman walk into the maintenance closet, look around, and then shut the door, and what happened was he locked himself in the maintenance closet, and the receptionist couldn't get over that he clearly looked around and had to realize it was a maintenance closet. Well, long story short, he ended up being stuck in that maintenance closet for about 3 hours, and the partners had to talk to him through the maintenance closet door. They had to call the maintenance manager to come in, and ultimately, he ended up not getting the job as much as they liked him. They couldn't get over the fact that he locked himself in the maintenance closet. So, us recruiters, we do everything to prepare our candidates for final rounds, but you just can't, prepare everybody for everything.
I can't imagine the embarrassment of of that candidate. I mean, getting stuck inside of a closet for 3 hours.
Yeah, he was devastated, and, it's just yeah, I couldn't imagine how he felt, and that, for us recruiters, obviously, it was painful for us too because it's hard enough to find a tax partner going public to public, and then you go through 5 or 6 rounds, and, I mean, the whole thing was a disaster, so
Yeah, no, that is disaster with an explanation point and becomes a very memorable podcast story, and recruiting story, and I do genuinely feel for that person going through that. I don't know if they had a significant other, but I can't imagine going home and he's saying, "Honey, good
Had
news."
the
Like,
interview. Yeah.
well, first of all, they're like, half days gone by, right? So a half day's gone by, and they come home and they're like,
How'd it
um,
go?
it must have gone great. How did it go?
Oh boy. You know?
That would be the worst. And I just care about, honey, I locked myself in the closet.
Oh boy.
Oh, so yeah, that must have been laughter for years forever for them. And for me, that is a good one. I am probably going to pass one along of like, don't lock yourself in the maintenance closet, right? Make sure you don't do anything crazy like that. Just unbelievable. Once again, what happens out there in the real world, right? When crazy things happen, wow, this is gonna go down a path of, like, current, I won't have college football stuff that's going on right now, so we won't talk about that, but, moving on of just so now let's talk about okay, just simple thing. How did you come up with the name Frederick Fox?
Yeah, great question. So, I'm 37 years old. When I started the business, I was 31, and I didn't want anyone to know that I started the company. I didn't want it to be my last name, LLC. You see that all the time. So Frederick is actually my middle name. And then Fox was, I always wanted to have an X in the name. And I started studying a lot of big retained search firms or Spencer Stewart, Russell Reynolds. They all had the alliteration. And my wife actually said, "Why don't you just go with Frederick Fox?" And so I think initially when I started out, um, you know, coming across as, "Hey, I'm a recruiter for Frederick Fox." I think people thought there was this person that existed named Frederick Fox that was really calling the shots. So in a sense, it was a decoy to not shine the light on me and to I thought it had a powerful name too, and, initially, I was insecure about the name, and then it became, a couple years in, people said, That's a great name, everybody remembers it, and, did you pay a marketing firm to come up with that?" I'm like, "No, I we just been running with it, and it's stuck." So,
Well, it's brilliant. I think it's a great idea. I like it how I see, one of the things I like about having a name that's not your own name
yeah,
is it to me, it's like it gives a sense of there's a legacy and it's not just about me, right?
exactly.
And so I like it, like that you came up with that. Your story about it, I don't know if you know the story of Under Armour and Kevin Plank, the founder CEO, but when he first went out, he would like have multiple different business cards. Like, I'm the CEO here, I'm the salesperson here. And he would like go into stories like, I'll have to go back to the CEO and talk about he's the same
Exactly.
person.
Exactly. Even today, even though we're a successful firm, it's all relative. When I go on sales meetings, I don't like to say, "Hey, I'm the CEO." I don't even call myself the CEO. I don't rarely call myself the founder. I like to say I'm a principal or lead recruiter, or sometimes I just call myself recruiter because I don't want it to be about me and my ego. I want it to be about listening and serving the end client. And, I don't want it to be about me. The business is about us accomplishing our mission and the model that we have. So, and I do have business partners now as well. So, if I always knew I would have partners. So why would a partner want to work for your named company? So I think that all kind of plays into it.
So I want to go down this path of because we have this shared experience, both being well, accountants by trade, if that makes sense, and then we went through there. You have a recruiting firm, we have an accounting firm, and 99% of accounting firms are short staffed. And and then there's less people going to the profession. And then CPAs, I believe 70% of them are at retirement age, right? You have massive consolidation having private equity. And so it's a very interesting time right now, right? In the accounting space and recruiting. So, what are you seeing in terms of trends when you're out there to hire potentially people and pull them out of firms? What's happening right now in that space?
Yeah, and to your point, I think a lot of the younger generation isn't getting into accounting, or there was a gap of it because I think a lot of people weren't moving up salary wise quick enough. And there was a big trend to get into data analytics, computer science. And it's funny how the pendulum swings where I like to say accountants are almost like the new software engineers. About 7 years ago, software engineers walked on water. CPAs are now starting to walk on water just because of basic supply demand economics. There's just not a lot of them out there. Um, as far as like trends as it's relevant for public accounting, um, we are seeing a lot of people, moving for better work-life balance, wanting to move to get a different portfolio of customers at times. People will move from one CPA firm to the next to potentially have a faster track at partner or more flexibility to build their business. Whereas, sometimes you've got a Ernst& and Young or Big Four, you're very stuck in their policies and procedures and how they do things. So, um, it was a broad question. Feel free to direct me in the right direction, but
No, you're nailing this because this is the fascinating part of what we're seeing as well, right? So I want to pull the thread a little bit on this work-life balance. So I grew up in the old school, right? So 30 years ago is right when I entered into a public accounting firm, and th- you didn't even think about expectations. It's just you knew you were going to be working 60 plus hours per week. That's the way I was. And there was never even a consideration of can I work less? It was like you're gonna lose your job. Right? And so, to provide for a family, and I got married, right after college is like, okay, there isn't a choice. I need to provide. I got to work wherever they tell me, right? But today there is, and because we see an experience as well, we actually are okay, honestly, with hiring people who are looking to having quote unquote, I don't like to use the term balance, but meaning where work isn't everything, right? It isn't the most important thing. Matter of fact, we have a couple staff members. One came to our firm because he wanted to coach high school football. Another person is like, I like to ski and I like to coach. We have another person that's in band. Like we have people that actually get to enjoy things that are outside of it. But why do you think that is? What's going on right now that it's okay to think this way, especially in a scarce environment? Right, that they still think they can get a job despite the needs of the firm.
oh boy, I'm a older millennial, so I'm 37. So what I would say is, and I've hired a few Gen Z, is that I just don't think it's the same work ethic. I come from a Midwestern family. I'm very much like you. I spent time actually in venture capital before I became a cost accountant. That was during college times. I worked for a venture capital firm. I mean, you would go into the office, it was dark outside, you'd come out, it was dark outside. And that was just, hey, suck it up. Your first 2 to 3 years, you need to build a foundation. And so, I don't know, my parents always raised me that you got to earn your stripes. And, that's just the consequences of building a foundation in your career. I don't think that Gen Z thinks of it that way. I think they think about the mission of the company, how they're giving back to society. I hate to dunk on them, but I think it's a little bit more of a coddled generation. And I think that they don't have the same priorities. Uh, and that's very vague. And I'm not saying they're all like that. I just think Y you just see it that there's someone coming right out of school now, it's almost like the second they finish onboarding and training, they are asking for a promotion, and it's like, "Well, wait a second, you're just starting to do the job we hired you for, barely." So, I don't know, sorry to be maybe negative or pessimistic on that. I don't know why it's that way. I do think smaller CPA firms that are like, I think 40 to 50, even 60 hours is reasonable for a smaller public accounting firm. These Big 4 shops are still having these people travel, work 90, 100 hours a week. If you are having a kid or you're married, you're not around your family or your newborn son. So work-life balance to them at times sounds like, "Oh my god, 50 hours a week? That's like a vacation for some of these people at Deloitte." So, as a small firm, you know, I always say you might not be able to pay as much as Deloitte, but if you have a clear, confident vision and you're reasonable with work hours, you can attract that talent. by being a little bit flexible. I think that's how you get that talent.
No, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that and, like, giving me some more details, and it is fascinating. It is we do have different generational and we are in a generation of abundance, right? There's abundance right now, and so when there's abundance, you can make these choices. The weird part, the irony is there's a scarcity in this field, right? And so now people are so tell me about that. So you mentioned that people are doing some things of, "Hey, you only have to work for 50 hours here." What other things are maybe I'll call it creative firms are doing to attract this younger generation to join their firm for this at least perceived belief of more balance or at least working less hours compared to, once again, firms like Deloitte?
Yeah, great question. Um, I think that smaller companies are actually proving that there is true work-life balance and allowing them to talk to other people within the company and actually validating that. Maybe even showing examples of trips that the company goes on or events that you have. I think it's the whole experience from the second you interact with them to their first day. Do they receive a t-shirt or swag, or how do you treat them in that first 90 days where they really feel that? I think that that's huge. Um, as far as creative things that other firms are doing, I saw one the other day where a firm was giving a discount on HOA fees here. I'm in Florida. So, a firm said, "Hey, here, another perk is that we'll pay half your HOA fees because we have a lot of HOAs out here." So, people are being creative about additional benefits or additional incentives to really demonstrate that they're gonna go one step further to make it a great experience, and yeah, I think with the shortage of talent, the candidates have a little bit more leverage, to your point, and can be a little bit pickier.
What are you seeing in trends in terms of working in the office versus remote?
In 2020, 21, 22, 23, it was, remote was, everywhere. I think in 2024 and 2025, it we're seeing most accounting jobs are back to 4 days a week in office, 1 day are remote. Now we work with a lot of public accounting firms that they're just so desperate for talent, they open it up to remote, and we're able to be more successful when it's remote, but, those are very far few between that firms are actually willing to have remote, tax managers. But they certainly have a competitive advantage with filling the jobs if they're open to remote. But and then within the industry, it's almost like back to 5 days a week on site, really in accounting, especially within manufacturing. They want accountants back, involved in the operations, the manufacturing plant, construction. Even is bringing people fully back to office. So it's becoming harder and harder to find remote jobs. It really is, especially in accounting.
So what you're saying is it's a little bit of a competitive advantage for those who are hiring remote accountants, right? Because for those who are seeking it, because that's the weird part, right? People got the taste of honey, so to speak, of working from home, and those who were able to enjoy it, right? And then all of a sudden they're back and they're commuting and they feel like it's waste, right? Even if don't get me wrong with the advantages of working in the business, I think there's a ton of advantages of working, sorry, in the office, right? There's a ton of advantages there. But from the employee side, there's advantages too, right, of working from home. And so, I so would you what it sounds like you were saying here is there is definitely an opportunity for firms who are still actually willing to work, hire from remote. They're having actually better success in getting candidates. Is that correct?
Oh, 100%. They could be a lot more picky, like we have a customer that's looking for affordable housing tax credit experience, and it's very niche, and you know, and they're open to remote anywhere in the US, and we're actually able to get them tax managers from tier 2 firms. They do more of that. And a lot of them because they're open to remote, but if they stuck to just their area with that niche of a tax experience, it's like it's almost impossible. They're gonna have to wait a year, or really overpay locally for 3 or 4 shops that have applicable experience.
Okay, so I'm curious, you also say you work with sales, right? And helping to hire them. And so it's interesting you see yeah, first of all, I think it's super fascinating on the whole computer science and software programmer stuff, like how that just gone away, right? And of course, we know AI has had a big impact on that, right? And people are finding ways to automate stuff that we used to or offshore, right? A lot of the software development. But how what are you seeing in the sales side? What type of trends are happening there, and why are people hiring or not hiring those type of people?
Yeah, so our 3 biggest industries right now are manufacturing, construction, and SaaS. Within SaaS particularly, or technology type companies, we're not seeing software engineers, front end, back end, product, data science. To your point, they're all getting offshore, but we are seeing a lot of these technology companies wanting to invest into salespeople in the United States and to grow market share, and expand that. People are still trying to expand sales, but not doing as much new product development. I think a lot of private equity firms, of course, there's a lot of them, and venture capital firms that are invested into SaaS, and we work with a couple that do. But we're seeing a trend. I don't know if you're seeing where P and VC is sort of burnt out on the intangible value of a product. They're starting to want to invest more into, I call it, heavy asset businesses, something tangible. You can touch it, like oil and gas, shipbuilding, you know, housing is something that actually has a physical, because for so long these product businesses were like they're pouring cash into it on perceived future value. And I think yes, people are doing that with AI, but yeah, I won't go down right, but that could be a potential additional investor bubble.
Yeah, so I'm interested. You mentioned manufacturing, construction, SaaS, and you didn't really mention AI at all, at least what you all are working with. You're seeing not you are you just generally not involved in as much, or is there still desperation to find people who are supporting AI? Because there's so many companies that are, I think there's 40,000 apps right now in AI right now. So obviously there's a lot of people doing things. So what trends are you seeing there, or if any at all?
Yeah, I think within sales, we do a lot of business development positions, sales engineers, customer success positions. So there's all different flavors of sales meeting marketing, sales meeting engineering type roles that we take on. Um, to your point, we do have a few AI clients, but we don't only do artificial intelligence jobs. Um, we work with a lot of companies that get a huge budget to hire a head of AI or head of AI product development. And it's interesting. I talk to the C-suite and the owners, and I say, okay, well, what is it that you want out of this head of AI? And I have heard this, I don't know if you've heard this, but they're like, "Look, the PE firm doesn't really understand what they just want to make sure that there's AI here." And so there is almost this, like, blank check right now that PE's sending these companies, and these owners oftentimes don't even really know what it is or what it's gonna do or what it's gonna solve, but they're just looking for somebody that can tell them what possibly could happen with AI.
Yeah, it's the we work a lot in strategic plan with organizations, and it's this almost this, why isn't AI in your strategic plan? But what you said there is like, but what's the purpose of AI, right? And what type of results are we getting from AI? And that's what's broken often, right? So I agree. I just don't 100%. I think there's many firms that are doing things because they're being told or they feel like they should, rather than using as a concept of it becoming their way of doing business. And there's such a difference, right, between the two of those, where they were then bringing on a tool, right? Versus actually having a culture of philosophy of, no, actually AI is the way of how we're doing business. It is the way how we're adopting towards certain things. It is our evolution model. It'll be very interesting once again over the next few years, right? Those who adopt and those who don't adopt. But I do think there's a lot of waste for sure, right? Unfortunately, right, with a lot of organizations that are going for it with it. I'm very, very curious in these brick and mortar companies when they're not doing it, because I fear for them a bit when they're not in it, right? Meaning, once again, for the purpose of being more efficient on sales, administration, marketing, you name it, right? All the different accounting, right, of driving towards that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more. I'm just kind of curious about, I know recruiting's recruiting. Do you do any secret sauce to help have it be more likely your candidates are going to be successful in placement, in the places you bring them?
I think where our secret sauce is in our model and our value prop to recruiters is where I really more hang my hat is just how we pay out our internal senior level recruiters. And I think that's where we differentiate. I think the market is tired of hearing, every recruiter has a 30-year database and building AI and so it's hard to have a true and I shouldn't probably say this, but it's hard to have a real differentiator with teeth that a customer hasn't heard before when you're a recruiter. So I think what we fall back on a lot of the times is the strength of our team, having the customer research our backgrounds, giving them case studies of applicable jobs we filled and like real case studies that where we've done a good job and why it's relevant and why we understand the complexity of their search. So I lean more on that than trying to sell bells and whistles and stuff that everybody's heard before that they're tired of hearing from recruiters, to be honest.
Yeah, good for you. So just good old fashioned nuts and bolts, it sounds like. Getting things done, matching people up, right? To actually help them out and get things done. I am a little curious to, once again, the people, it sounds like, so if I'm hearing correctly, I'm going back to the accounting here once again. The people who are willing to move, it sounds like the ones who are willing to move is because it's more of a burnt out type thing. Is that correct? Versus you know, or is it, I think you mentioned also it's perhaps accelerating onto another position because they feel stuck in the cog. Um, is that how you're able to pull people from the larger firms today?
So we do a lot of public account. I call it public to public is what we call it. So we unfortunately, a lot of these jobs are always open. We call it evergreen, and because the market's so if you actually get a tax manager that's willing to stay in public tax, it sounds bad, but, like, we can take that person and 7 firms wanna interview them, and so we try to be, as fair as possible based off of the candidate's demands, but we give our customers a shot at on goal with this candidate, but, yes, we do proactively go after these people. I think what really helps is the remote is a big reason to actually pull somebody. If you have more flexibility on remote, I think you have to have, like, work-life balance is always the biggest one, where there's actually teeth there that it actually exists. And then we're seeing a lot of firms take senior tax associates and moving them to tax manager. So maybe they're just saying, they're moving people up faster. And so we do our best to convince and pull and drag people out. But um, to be honest, what really helps us is like you tell us why your CPA firm like what is your vision and differentiator and we'll take it to market. And so it's per case basis, but
One of the things I think you do that is unique is you have a lot of veterans that are involved in your organization. It's the vast majority of people that you have in your staff. How do you get into that? Why do you get into that? Why is that an important principle of your organization?
yeah, we only hire people with 5+ years of agency recruiting experience. I think um it it's a very, very tough industry right now for agency recruiters. The way I would describe it is the last 2 years have been a downturn for us. And a lot of people are getting out of the industry that are agency, which probably a lot of people are excited about that on the customer side, I would imagine. Um, but like it's like in real estate where nobody wants to buy and nobody wants to sell. It's sort of like that the last 2 years in staffing where companies don't really need to hire, and candidates don't really need to move jobs right now. So clients are really picky and candidates are really picky. So what's happening right now is the transaction volume has just slowed down. In 2020, 21, 22, everybody's bounced around everywhere. So recruiters were making so much money just because of people were chasing greener pastures and companies. So we've just seen a total flip flop. Um, and so the reason back to why we have senior level people is we just want to grow and we want to do good work and we don't want to be training recent grads right now. Further down the line, as we grow and scale and we're more established, we'll have a training program. We'll teach people how to do the job. But I think right now we're trying to go fast and furious, steal market share, and get really good people.
Good for you. Good for you. So you've already mentioned some of your numbers there. You become a $10 million business. You're trying to get 20 million double. I love that. Love people in high growth. That's once again, I love working with companies that are trying to get towards those accomplishments. It's awesome because as you know, you have to change your people, your process and systems, right, to help get to those higher numbers. How do you measuring outside of those factors there we're talking about? How do you measure success with your business and with your clients?
Outside of revenue, I think um, we do look at per desk, like revenue per head count. But then, obviously net income is the ultimate measurement. Um, but also like culture and people, I had a moment where I finally, I'm such a hard charger, but about a year ago, our company had a get together in Dallas, Texas, and there was about 40 of us on a porch and having, we had cocktails and barbecue and everybody got along. And that was a special moment for me where it was like, okay, this is success. People actually like working here and people are actually friends and laughing and, this is a good group of people and we all work together and so that brings me what brings me to success is when other people are happy and they're making good money and I'm making an impact on their life. Of course, we look at net income and growth year over year and revenue growth over year. But there's success there too, just overall happiness.
It's great. I appreciate that additional explanation right there that's always and that's always a special moment, right? When you see you're making a difference with people, right? And that would have been a pretty awesome. Now, are your people primarily remote? Are they on what location? What's your current situation?
Yeah, we are almost fully remote, but our back office staff comes in 2 days a week into our office in Delray. So in Delray, we have about 6 people locally, but everybody else is remote and we're in we've got people in California, Arizona, Texas, and I would say the Carolinas are like where most of our people are, but we do have people in the Midwest and couple people in Vancouver. So we're agnostic on location for senior level people. Now when it comes to someone right out of school, we're only going to do that at the headquarters. We're not having junior people be remote. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally makes sense. Okay, so I'm curious for you. You got a fast growing business. There's a lot of challenges, right, that come with that. We know when we work with business owners and CEOs, it's like it's a challenge, right? When you go from founding to becoming a $10 million business, a lot of challenges, and you have a huge another set of challenges going forward. So, for your own sake, what type of habits do you consistently do so you can perform your best as a leader?
Okay, so I do have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So one thing that I'm always trying to do is it's always a battle to have good sleep hygiene. So I'm big on sleep hygiene. I I don't drink a lot of alcohol, to be honest. I do have a full-time trainer that I train with 4 days a week. I recently lost 25 pounds. I still need to lose 20 more pounds. So I think, also, pursuing a spiritual life outside, having balance there is important to me. And, I think, yeah, it's a good question, but I think I work as hard as I can every week and be intentional about my time and stick to a rhythm and a schedule. So,
Yeah, good for you. I mean, that's once again, I always us as leaders, right? It's easy to get so consumed, right, with your business, with the business. And here you are, you have family, you got 3 young kids. That's a lot of stress and pressure right there, but also exciting, right? Because it's always kids could care less about your business, right? Just I think one of the wonderful funny of having kids is that it does take you away from it in a good way. Meaning like it, realizes that there's things that are more important, right, in life. And I love it how you've hired a trainer. That's clearly a dedicated part in your physical part. Good for you for losing weight. That's a good for you. There's things, right, where all of a sudden catches up and we don't know what happened. It's like because we've been working so hard, right? And it's like,
You're
oh
sitting
crap,
all
I gotta.
day. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You gotta make it a
You
priority. So
but
those are
you look like you stay in good shape though. So
try. But yeah, same thing. It's same concept of like, what can we do on a regular basis? Because there are challenges, there are things going on. And yeah, it's important to keep that body going, right? Because it's the only thing we have. If that's not there, it's gonna be hard for us to perform. So how do you now measure success in your personal life?
in my personal life, I look at the status of my marriage. So that's something I'm constantly working on as well. When you start a business, the marriage it goes through a lot of challenges. So I think constantly trying to do better as a husband and as a dad. You know, um, am I making time for one-on-one dates with each kid? Um, you know, where's my wife at? Are we getting date nights? Um, y- so I think in the personal life, it's up for me right now. It's all about my family. Um, I'm not a work hard, play hard guy. I'm more of a work hard, work harder once I get home type phase of my life. And then the other thing on the personal side is I have fitness is something that I've gotten back into. And so I I've I those are kind of the two main things outside of work that I'm focused on. So
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. So I'm curious for you. I don't know if you're a reader much or not, but is there any books for you that have been has really inspired you, or something like you recommend to others?
y- you know, so far this year I did read Raving Fans. I read this book called Obvious Atoms, which was really good. I think I in the first quarter I think I had gone through 10 books and then I slowed down. But so many different books, but I do think for every business owner, Raving Fans is I don't know if you've read it, but I think
Yep, it's really good.
I think it's really worth a read to make you rethink every part of the customer experience as they've interact and go down a journey of your service or product. And so that one's really stuck in my mind throughout this year.
So first of all, it's everyone's just listening to this part. I loved it how Will just kind of nonchalantly said, I did 10 books in the first quarter." I know you said you went down to that same pace, but we typically know people who come on our show are consistently learning, right? Consistently trying to find ways to make their business better, right? And to inspire them, right? To do things better. And so thank you for like sharing that. And Graving Fans, once again, is a great recommendation. Well, this has been a great podcast. We're at that point. We got to wrap this up. How can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, you can research our team at www.frederickfox.com. I have also great partners and readers, so feel free to reach out to anyone in our company. You can find me on LinkedIn at Will Spengler. If you message me, I'll respond at 11 o'clock at night. My wife won't be happy, but I'm always accessible. And if you find me credible, love to connect with you.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the Motos podcast today.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate you having me on.
And make sure you hang on. We got our gift for you, Will. So as we wrap up here, but to everyone else is listening, we're just once again so grateful that you listen to us, help us become the fourth best strategic planning podcast out there. It's through your consistent following, sharing stories, sharing guests with others, and what I'm always appreciative of the relationships that we've built with our guests through the years, and that we've continued to develop partnership relationships. People come to speak at our events, and that's what I'm grateful for. This, so Will, once again, thank you so much for being on it. And to everyone who's listening, as we always like to say, wishing you the very best and measuring your success. Have a great day.